Open our Bibles tonight to 1 Timothy chapter 6, and we'll begin reading with verse 1. Let as many servants as are under the yoke count their own masters worthy of all honor, that the name of God and his doctrine be not blasphemed. And they that have believing masters, let them not despise them because they are brethren, but rather do them service, because they are faithful and beloved, partakers of the benefit. These things teach and exhort. If any man teach otherwise, and consent not to wholesome words, even the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and to the doctrine which is according to godliness, he is proud, knowing nothing, but dotting about questions and strifes of words, whereof cometh envy, strife, railings, evil surmisings, perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds, and destitute of the truth, supposing that gain is godliness. From such withdraw thyself. Have nothing to do with them. Get away from them. Stay away from them. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lust, which drowned men in perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil. Not money. I've heard it said bazillions of times, money is the root of all evil. It's not. It's the love of money, which while some have coveted after, they're not content. They have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But thou, O man of God, flee these things. Follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and meekness. Fight the good fight of faith. Lay hold on eternal life, whereunto thou art also called, and hast professed a good profession before many witnesses. We live in a day where almost nobody is content with hardly anything. Children are not content with their brand new toys for more than a few minutes. If you don't believe what I said, at Christmas, kids open their presents and they open it. Oh boy, this is exactly what I wanted. Thank you. And in 5 minutes, it's done, cast off to the side, and they're on to the next toy and the next toy. We're not content with the foods we have to eat. Sometimes when I go home, or I usually call my wife on the way home, I'll either call her or text her. And one of the questions I've quit asking because she could predict it before I ask it, What's for dinner? Do you ever ask that question, what's for dinner? I think most of us have. Oh, I thought we'd have bologna. Oh, okay, good, wonderful. I love bologna. I thought we would have leftovers that we've had for the last 3 nights. And it's like, how many ways can you serve leftovers? Oh, boy, oh boy, oh boy. See, we're not content, even with the food we have. We're not content with the clothes we have, because many people always want the latest styles and the newest fads. We've been going through both of our closets, but mine particularly. The other day I got a pair of pants out, and I'm getting ready to, get dressed, and my wife came in and said, "You are not wearing those pants." Why not? Well, they're 20 years old. They're faded. They're around the bottoms are ragged. You're not wearing those out in public. Doesn't bother me in the least. If you don't like the pants I wear, buy me a new pair and I'll wear them for you. But new clothes, I've got pants that are literally 15, 20 years old. I've got shirts that are that old or older. Doesn't bother me that they're not in style. But for many people, they're not content unless they have the latest, greatest. We're not content with the house we have. We need more bedrooms. We need more storage. One thing I've learned over the years, no matter how big the house is or how much storage space it has, we always manage to fill it up and need more space very soon. Many people are never happy at work. I've known people that they've had 20 jobs in 20 months, and they're never happy with any of those jobs. Their boss is always a jerk or an idiot. The management doesn't know what they're doing. Every employee is a moron, and they're never happy. Did you ever have anybody like that when you were management? We're going to give you a $20 an hour raise. Is that the best you can do? I remember in college, I got a 10-cent an hour raise. I was thrilled to death. 10 cents an hour. Nowadays, if they're not making 15, 20, 25 bucks an hour, they're not content. Many people are not content in their marriage. I had that test on Friday. It was a 2.5-hour test. And so during that time, I had about a 45-minute test, then an hour break, and then a 45-minute test. And so I got to talk to a lot of the people, and I asked one of the ladies that was stuck with me, I said, "Are you married?" She said, "No, I'm not yet." I said, "Well, let me give you some advice. There's a lot of things worse than being single. Being married to the wrong person is worse than being single. She said, I'm perfectly happy to wait until God brings the right man along. And I said, just make sure his first name isn't always. But no matter who you marry, they're human. They have faults. They have opinions. And so some people expect a perfect marriage. The only time that will ever exist is in heaven when Christ marries his chosen bride. No marriage is perfect. Every spouse has faults. Every spouse has certain things that get under your nerves. But some people, it's like, I can't handle that. I can't stand that. If she's going to do that, if he's going to do that, I'm out of here. I'll find somebody else that I can be content with. Every spouse does something stupid occasionally. Some of us more than others. And so there are people that go from spouse to spouse to spouse to spouse because they are never content. Some people are never content with their church. No matter how doctrinally sound a church may be, they can always find fault. They can always find something to criticize, something they disagree with, and thereby I'm going to find a church that I can be content with. I know a family right now. They have, and I've only known them for, I met them before I came here, so I've known them for about 35 years, and they have been in about 30 different churches during those 35 years that I've known them, because they're never content. And I know some of their pastors they've had, and if they can't get along with them, they are the ones that have a problem. The pastor is too serious or not serious enough. The church is too large or too small. The church is too dogmatic or not dogmatic enough. They are never content. I have observed that people who are not content in anything are usually miserable in many areas of their life. Should a Christian fit into that category? As Christians, should we be content where God has placed us? How can we be content when I'm surrounded by sinners? Someone sent me a joke, I guess, and it was written in poetry, and I'll sum it up, and it said, when you get to heaven, there'll be some people you will be shocked to see. You didn't think they were saved. But before you get too excited, there'll be people that'll be shocked to see you there. We all need to learn to be content. What is contentment? And I'm going to go through some of these things very quickly. To be content means that we have a mind that is content with what God has given us and what God has placed us. Contentment is not in a bigger house, a bigger car, a newer car, new clothes, new whatever. Contentment is not dependent on anything exterior. Contentment is a state of mind. Discontent is also a state of mind. It is a mind, a mental choice that I am going to be content wherever. Paul said, I've learned to be content. Well, wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. It is, I have surrendered to God. If God chooses to make me limp in one leg, I need to mentally accept this is God's path for me, and I need to be content. It also means that I am satisfied. Wouldn't you like a new car? I am satisfied with the car I've got. I'm satisfied with the clothes I've got, even though some of them are so shiny they look like a mirror from wear and tear. I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied with what God has given me. It also means that I am happy with what God has given me. Sometimes that one gets a little hard. Contentment does not come naturally. I mentioned children. Look at children at Christmas. They go literally, I've seen them over the years, forget the toy, I'm going to play with the box. So I said next year, we're not going to buy any presents. We're just going to give them boxes and let them play with boxes. Contentment is not natural. It has to be learned. Proverbs said in 27:20, hell and destruction are never full. So the eyes of man are never satisfied. The natural man in the flesh is never satisfied. We have to learn contentment. The natural man is selfish. The natural man is self-centered. We have to teach ourselves and learn to be content. It is learned. The verse I started to quote, Philippians 4:11, Paul is writing, not that I speak in respect of want. Now, you have to read the context to fully understand what Paul is saying. Not that I speak in respect of want. There's not anything that I really want, for I have learn in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. I heard a preacher say one time, whether I'm in Michigan, California, whatever state I'm in, I can be content. That is not what Paul is talking about. In the prior verses, we find out that there had been times when Paul didn't have food, didn't have a lot of things. And the church at Philippi had sent special offerings over and over and over to help Paul. And he said, I speak not because I want anything. I've learned whether I have money or whether I don't. I've learned to be content. How do you learn that? It starts in the mind. Paul said in another passage, bringing into subjection every thought. Every thought. If I let Satan run my mind, I'm not going to be content with anything. Occasionally, you run across these people. I hear it probably more than many of y'all. It's too hot in here. It's too cold in here. Need I say more? You know what? I set the thermostat on 74, usually on Sunday. 74, some people are burning up, and some people are wrapped up in blankets. It doesn't matter what you set the thermostat on. Some people are not going to be content. Some people would freeze to death at our house in the wintertime. In the winter, I'm not going to tell you what we turn it down to. Let's just say if you come to our house, we've got a stack of blankets that we will give you because you're going to need a blanket to wrap up in. But you know what? We can be content. We learn to be content. Contentment is one of the fruits of the Spirit, Galatians 5. The fruit of the Spirit is, you know them, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Temperance is a word that can carry a meaning of contentment. It literally means self-control, regardless of the circumstances. I can exercise self-control. Years ago, a very dear friend of ours passed away. And we were in Clarksville at that time. And he was a good friend of my whole family, my dad, myself, my brother. His funeral was several hundred miles away. So my dad and I decided because it was winter, we would drive, we would go to the funeral and represent the rest of our family. Nobody told us. There was only one motel in that town. They had one room left open. Now this is the dead of winter. Our room had no heat. didn't have much of a bed either. I think one of us ended up sleeping on the floor or chair, something or other. But you know what? I've learned you pull up that extra blanket, you snuggle up in a fetal position, you exercise self-control, and you become content, because let's face it, grumbling wasn't going to do any good. People ask me frequently, multiple times a week, how are you? How are you doing? And it's like, you know what? I used to tell people, and I found out they really didn't care. So now my slogan is, I'm fine for the shape I'm in. I'm fine. Can't walk, can't sit, can't stand, can't do much. But you know what? I'm content with what God has given me at this point in time. I control my lust. I control my emotions. Self-control controls everything about me. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9:27, I keep under my body and bring it into subjection. It's work. It's a constant battle to keep under my body and to bring my body into subjection. Oh, I would give anything to have your bulldozer. I don't know what I'd do with it, but no. I have to beat my body, bring my body into subjection, and say, you know what? If you gave me your bulldozer, you just gave it to me, lock, stock, and barrel, what would I do with it? It'd sit out in the yard, gather rust, get dirty. I'm perfectly happy without a bulldozer. Wouldn't know what to do with it. So I bring my body into subjection. 2 Corinthians 10:5, casting down imaginations. Oh, what I would do to have his boat. Cast down imaginations. And every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought. When I start finding myself, it didn't come out right, when I find myself starting to be jealous, I need to bring those thoughts into captivity and be content with what I have. But godliness with contentment is more than just saying, I'm perfectly happy with our house, car, clothes, food. It's more than just contentment. Notice in verse 6, godliness with contentment is great gain. Living a holy and godly life. All of these other things fade into existence. How many of you have ever flown in an airplane? Quite a few of you. I would rather fly any day than drive. My wife is the exact opposite. she would drive to Hawaii rather than fly if they had an interstate. But the first time I flew, I was in a single engine, wasn't one of these big jumbo jets, and we were only a couple of miles up in the air. But I looked down, that house looks like a Monopoly house. That tractor trailer looks like a toy. The farther you get, the smaller everything else looks. The closer I get to God, the more I practice godliness, serving God with all of my heart, the more distant this world becomes and the less important those things become. Trusting God for life. He promised, you put me first. And if you remember a couple of weeks ago, Philippians 4:19 was given to a church that had given sacrificially. And God said, you put me first, and I will supply your need. May not supply all of your wishes. I may not give you all of your wants, but put me first, and I'll make certain you never have a need. Now, does that mean that we cannot have nice things? No. And I've got 1, 2, 3 passages of Scripture. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and verse 19, and again, you've got to read the context to fully understand what Paul is talking about. In verse 19, Paul says, circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God. Verse 20, let every man abide in the same calling wherein he is called. Evidently, there were some people in the church at Corinth that said, oh, my parents circumcised me when I was a baby. I didn't have anything to do with it. Does that mean I'm not a true Jew? Or I'm not a Christian because my daddy circumcised me, which was under the old law? Paul said, no. If your dad circumcised you as a baby, it doesn't mean you can't be a Christian. If your daddy did not circumcise you, that does not mean that you cannot be a Christian. Circumcision, uncircumcision is nothing. Abide in the same calling wherein he was called. Now, if you skip down in verse 21, art thou called, being a servant? Care not for it. But if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord, being a servant, is the Lord's freeman. Likewise also, he that is called, being free, is God's servant. God saved you, and you were a slave. Be content. Don't think, oh, if I wasn't a slave, I could do this, this, and this. If you were saved being a slave, Be the best slave you can be. If the master makes you free, take it by all means. But understand, even if your master sets you free, you're still God's servant. If you're a slave, if you're free, be content. Now, the last passage is in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to read all of this. But beginning in verse 25, Paul says, ye are bought with a price. We covered that this morning. Be not ye the servants of men. Well, I am going to have to skip down. Verse 25. Now concerning virgins, I have no commandment of the Lord, yet I give my judgment as one that hath obtained mercy of the Lord, to be faithful. You've never been married. You're single. Never been married. Don't spend your life wishing, oh, I would give anything if I were married. You might get what you want, and it won't be what you want. If you're a virgin, never been married, and that's God's part in your life, be content. Be content. Now, if you are married, don't wish you weren't. I hate it when Satan puts thoughts and they go through your mind, because then you got to sweep them out. Are you bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Don't wish and think, oh, I could serve God so much more if I wasn't married. You're married, be content. Serve God to the best you can in that marriage relationship. He goes all the way down through. He's talking about, married versus unmarried. If you're married, certainly you can't do things you used to do before you were married. When you marry, there are certain responsibilities that come with that. But don't wish that you were single again. I'll tell you up front, I would not trade my wife for anything. I usually tell people I wouldn't trade her for anything less than a 12 gauge. I'm joking. In reality, I tell people, other than salvation, she's the greatest thing that happened to me. And I'm content to be married to a wonderful lady. But if you're not married, and God has not seen fit to bring the right person across your path, don't be miserable because you're not married. Be single and be content and give yourself totally to serving God. Discontent will make you miserable in every aspect of your life.